So going back to that moment where you'd done this huge motorcycle ride and you'd arrived at this exact spot that you could see the mark on the road from where you'd had your crash at the age of 18, with cameras around you, were you able to process the hugeness of that moment and the pain, or was it just all too surreal to do so?
Do you know, I've been back to the place where I crashed maybe 3 or 4 times now in my life. And as you say, there's this marker on the road, and it's very, very weird to see because it's this almost like a portal into the past. It's like there's a big, basically where I crashed, there's a black skid in the road that's still there 18 years later, right? So this thing that happened that I can barely piece together because it was so traumatic and so the crash was so bad, I don't remember a lot of it, but there's this marker, like an actual proof that this thing happened. You know what I mean? It's really surreal. And sitting by it, you know, at any time now, even 18 years down the line or however long it's been since my injury, I can't quite take in the enormity of it all. How there is this point, we all have sliding doors in our lives, and we all, you know, can look back and go, oh, if I had not gone on that train, or if I had not met that man, or if I had not, you know, had that conversation or taken that flight, my life would have gone a different direction. I'm sure we can all relate to that. But for me, that's this, like, when I sit in this spot, especially with cameras around me, I can't get my head around how there could have been a completely different life lived. And I don't often think about what that life was. Like, if I hadn't been paralysed, if I hadn't driven the car the way I did, if I hadn't taken that road, if I'd taken another one, you know, all those things, they all come rushing up. And then there's the camera going, how do you feel? How do you feel? I'm like, I don't know. But, you know, I think you just got to do, it's almost like any big milestone in your life. It takes a while to go, right, stop, ground yourself. How do you feel? And it takes, I don't know, I think it's a hard thing to do to really identify what it is it all feels, because there's a lot of loss in there. There's a lot of gratitude in there. There's a lot of, like, you know, potential what ifs and who could I have been sort of thing, but also like a real gratitude. I'm still here. I didn't die. I could have died in that spot. So yeah, it was huge. But, you know, I also just have to stop and think, shit, you did it. I was paralysed. At a time when I was paralysed, I didn't know what I could do. Like, no one had told me what was possible for a young woman with a high-level paralysis. And I had no idea. I didn't think disabled people could do all that much. And that was my naivety, my ignorance. I'd never really met many disabled people. And so, you know, when I write this in my book, actually, when I met myself, I was the first disabled person I'd ever met. So I had a lot of ableism that I carried with me. It's taken me a long time to unpack it. So even just the action of riding a motorbike to the place where I crashed the car with a camera crew that I have brought with me feels like, wow, look what you've done. Wow, you've created this thing that, you know, you had no idea was possible. And that's exciting as well. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we were chatting just before we came into the studio. We were chatting about, you know, doing this, putting a lot of your life story, you can never put the whole thing there, but a lot of your life story in ink onto a page, and just how bizarre that is. Yeah. And the fact that we've never met, although I feel like I know you and you feel like you know me, but I've read through your life, and I've, you know, lapped up every word of these beautiful and painful stories, and then here we are, and I know all of this stuff, and that's about to happen with thousands of strangers that you might not ever meet. You know, how are you dealing with that? Because that's big.
So I think the way that I am getting sleep at the moment and not feeling terrified is there's 2 things going on for me. So when I had my injury, I didn't really have I didn't have very many people around to use as role models. I didn't really know much about, like I just said, what was possible for people like me. So part of me wanted to write my book and write my story just to give somebody who might be going through a similar situation an idea that don't be limited by your own or other people's beliefs of what you and your body can and can't do. Because, of course, you are now going to be living, if you have a physical disability, within the limitations of what your body can and can't do. But if you can expand your mind and you can find, you know, systems around you to support you, sky's the limit, really it is. And I don't mean that flippantly. I also don't mean to dispel at people that literally have had choices taken away from them, because that's a very real thing. But if you can create an attitude and an environment around you that enables you, you'd be surprised how far you can go. It's a very privileged position to be in, but it's true. And I think that was one reason why I wanted to write the story down, just to sort of say, look, this is an example of a way in which you can disbelieve some of the myths around, you know, disability and all those things. So there's that. I also took a long and hard look in the mirror and I thought, right, who are the people that I admire the most in the world? Who are the role models? Who are the artists, the musicians, the painters, the thinkers that I adore? What do? They tell the truth. They do. They put their heart and soul out there. And they talk about, like, you look, Tracy Emin, who talks about her body being ravaged all the way through her art, but more recently, you know, with her cancer, for example, or you look at, you know, Freida Kahlo, who I have just literally, well, she's my hero. And you look at what she did. She puts her reality on paper. And I thought, on canvas. I thought, that's what I have to do. I have to do that for myself. If I write a story that isn't genuine, what have I done? I've wasted my own time and other people's time. And so holding those two thoughts in my head, I'm just going forward with this and hoping that, yes, it is a very raw and very unflinching and very candid account of what it's like to wake up with paralysis and live with it in a way that I don't feel has ever really been looked at before. Certainly, I've not read a story like it before. There's that. But I also feel, why not? We've got to unpack some of the truths. I think it's such a wonderful thing to do, to go into the nuances of disability and start to understand the different lived experiences that we all have. Often you get grouped, you know, wheelchair user or somebody with a sensory impairment, you know, you kind of get lumped together, or even wider, the whole group of disability gets grouped together. But there's so much within that needs to be explored, and spinal injury carries its own complications, and it's very impactful to the people that have it and the family members of those who acquire it. So I wanted to also really go into those two, the relationships I've had to go through with my family and how that's impacted them too. All of this wanted to feed in, you know, so there's a lot to it.